You know what I really do love about this bike? It's the power. Woo! So much fun. What's going on, everyone? Welcome back. Today is the 10,000 mile review of the MB Agusta Brutale 800RR SCS. So let's get into it. Here she is. We'll do a little walk around. It is stock with the exception of some accessories that I've added to it. Most of them just cosmetic. You can see the little red touches. Some of them are purchased. Some of them are painted. And I do have the beautiful Fresco exhaust, the Corsair Trio exhaust. I love the look of the triple exhaust, so we had to keep that. The bike is a little bit dirty right now. It did get caught in the rain on the last ride. Let's jump on and go for a ride. So in this video, we're going to talk about why I purchased the bike, how I decided to go with this one, things I like about the bike, things I don't like about the bike, and do I regret my purchase. So let's get started. We're going for a ride out on some country roads, one of my favorite places to ride. These are pretty straight roads. Don't want to have to think about the roads too much, so I can focus on what we're talking about. So if you're not familiar with MB Agusta, they are an Italian brand. They are not as common here in the United States. They don't have quite as good of dealer support, so that is one thing to keep in mind when you're buying an MB Agusta. So this bike is a triple cylinder 798 cc's. And it puts out 140 horsepower and I believe 64 foot-pounds of torque. I don't want to get too much into the specs, but the way that this engine is tuned or built, designed, most of the power on this bike is up at the higher revs. I believe 140 horsepower is reached up at around 13,000 RPM, which is the red line. And the peak torque, I believe, is around 10 or 11,000 RPM. So why did I decide to go with this bike? Well, those of you who are not familiar with them, they are beautiful. In my opinion, MB Agustas look like no other bikes. It is just simply gorgeous. That was the main selling point. Previous to this bike, I did have a Yamaha MT-07, which I really loved. Even though it's still considered a naked class bike, a naked sport bike, it's vastly different than this. It was about 70 horsepower. This is 140. The torque figures are higher on this, even though it doesn't feel as torquey. But with that being said, the second reason I bought this bike is they did come out for the 2021 model year, which this is actually a 2022, which I purchased in 2021. I was told that they didn't make a lot of 2021s, or they just basically called a lot of the 2021s 2022s because production was low that year with all the pandemic stuff going on. But the addition of the Tft Dash, which I do really like, and this is the one that they use on most of their new Euro 5 models, which this is. The Dash I do really like. It is easy to see. You can change the back of it to white versus black background. I keep it on the dark one, the black one. It's very visible. There's all different settings you can go into as far as the readout, what you see, what you don't see. There's a race mode, and I will make a separate video on that covering strictly the different modes, all the different settings, what I think about each one. So I'll put a link to that right here so you guys can check that out. I really like that. It does have cruise control. Really like that. It does have launch control. To be honest, I think I've used it maybe twice. I don't really feel the need for that. You can change the traction control. You can turn the front lift controller, otherwise known as wheelie control. You can turn that on and off, but the features are really great. So the handling of this bike, that was the first big thing I noticed. Coming from an MT-07, or it didn't matter what bike I had before this, I was really kind of scared to get a new bike. How long is it going to take me to feel comfortable on a new bike? And how am I going to get used to all the settings, the different position if you're seated in? Well, it took about 2 days of riding this thing, and I felt at home. The handling on this bike, in my opinion, is awesome. I've ridden a few other sportier bikes, but in my opinion, this is really nice. Handles the turns good. Acceleration is good. I really feel like I'm one with the bike when I'm riding out on the twistier roads, really pushing it more to the limits than just going on some straighter roads like this. The power is very smooth. It comes on. It's not intimidating. At the lower RPMs, it's nice and relaxed, and then it turns into a different animal when you get up, say, above 9,000 RPMs. The handlebars on this bike are a bit wider compared to a lot of bikes. I personally like it. I feel like I have good control of the bike. It's a more relaxed seating position compared to like a sport bike. However, compared to some of the other naked bikes, I'd say it's a bit sportier. I am on the shorter side, so I do have to reach forward a little bit more, but by all means, it is a very comfortable bike to ride as far as the seating position. So what else do I like about this bike? This is the SCS version, and if you're not familiar with that, that stands for Smart Clutch System. This has a recluse automatic clutch, which allows you to remain in gear without pulling in the clutch, coming to a complete stop. So if you have to ride in the city and stop and go traffic, it makes it much more enjoyable. If you want to take your hand off the clutch when you're at a stoplight or a stop sign, you don't have to fiddle around with the shifter trying to find neutral. It makes much more enjoyable time riding in the city or wherever you have to stop frequently. So this right here is the perfect example of how the SCS system works. You can see that I'm in first gear, however, my hand not on the clutch. Whenever I want to go, all I have to do is give it a twist of the throttle. Light's green, twist the throttle, and there you go. Now back to the review. So that was a big selling point. I was a little apprehensive to get it, but I am very glad that I did. It also has a quick shifter up and down, which in my opinion is pretty good. I don't have too much experience riding other bikes with those. You do have to get into a little bit of a higher rev range in order to really appreciate it, but it does shift pretty smoothly. Right now we're in third gear. Give it a little bit of gas. That was third to fourth. That was fourth to fifth. If you want to shift down, just let off the gas. And you can see how smooth that was. I'm not sure how well that comes through the camera or the sound, but that's another plus on this bike. The gearing on this bike is pretty tall. I am able to hit about 70 miles an hour in first gear. I wish it was a little bit different. I like the way my MT-07 was geared. It was a little bit shorter. I wish this was somewhere in between where it is now in the MT-07. Just because even though you have more torque than the MT-07, it doesn't feel quite as torquey in the lower revs the way it's geared. But if you're interested in how this compares to an MT-07, I am going to do a whole separate video comparing those two. So what else do I like about this bike? The looks, of course, the feel of it. It is one of the most powerful bikes in this class. Like I said, it's a triple cylinder. There's not too many other triple cylinders in the 800 or 600 series or size class that have 140 horsepower. So obviously, we love power. Some things I don't like about it. Well, the seat. The seat's comfortable for about 50 miles. After that, it is not the best. I do feel after 60, 70 miles, it starts to get uncomfortable, and I do want to get off the bike, stretch the legs, and yeah, it is what it is. A lot of these bikes don't have the best seats. The sound of it, the stock exhaust is beautiful in my opinion, and it is one of the most beautiful exhausts I've ever seen on any bike. However, it sounds terrible. One of the things you can do is remove the servo. They call it a servo delete. There's a valve in the exhaust that opens up completely around 6,000 to 8,000 RPMs. I did remove that, and that does give it a deeper sound at idle. But I did put on the aftermarket exhaust, the Fresco Force Trio exhaust, because I had to keep that triple look. I know the SC project is louder. Some people say it's even too loud, but right now I am really happy with the Fresco exhaust. I do have the dB killers in, but I did cut them off, so they don't really do much to quiet it. They just look cool in my opinion, and I painted them a cool bronze. So what else don't I like about this bike? The stock battery. It comes with a sealed lead acid battery, and it's not good. And I don't know if it's particularly the bike or the battery. Either way, after 5 or 6 days of not riding this, the voltage would drop so low that it would struggle to start. If I would go over that, sometimes the battery would just flat out die, which is pretty terrible in my opinion, to get a bike that can't even start after a couple weeks of sitting there. The bike does come with a battery tender, which leads me to believe they know that the battery does not do well in it. But for $20,000 out the door, what I paid for this bike, I don't know why they couldn't throw in a lithium battery. So I did put in a lithium battery, and that has improved it quite a bit. I don't have those issues anymore. I've had it in for about 3 months now, so I don't know how it's going to go in the long term, but for right now, the past 3 months, it has been working awesome. I don't have to worry about it starting, and I do have a separate video on that install. It was quite tedious, but you can check that out if you're interested in doing the same. Another thing with this bike, at least in the United States, and I guess all over, is the availability of accessories. I had absolutely no idea when I got this bike how hard it is to find accessories, at least in the United States, given there was the pandemic going on, so that made the availability of a lot of things in all areas in life harder to get. Some of the accessories I got for it took a very long time. A lot of them were coming from Italy overseas or Europe, so that took quite a while to come. I ordered a Radiator Guard when I got this bike in June of 2021, and I received that Radiator Guard in November of 2021 after the winter was here where I live and I could not even ride the bike anymore. So that's one thing to keep in mind with MV Agusta. The availability of parts is just not out there. There's not as many manufacturers that make parts for them. With my last bike being a Yamaha, I was able to go on Amazon or Revzilla, Cycle Gear, any site, and you could buy 10 different kinds of a single accessory. Whereas with the MV Agusta, there's only a handful of manufacturers that make accessories for them. There's also the lack of availability to tune these bikes, from what I understand. The thing I don't like about the bike is the tunability. I do not believe, from what I understand, that you're able to tune the ECU in here. If you buy the SC Project exhaust, it actually comes with an additional ECU that you just plug in that's tuned for that exhaust, which is kind of odd compared to most other brands where you're able to tune them. You can take them out, send them to some companies, and they'll tune them for that exhaust, change the curve, the fueling. How it's tuned now, I don't have any complaints. Another thing I don't like about this is the turn signals. I'm going to put the turn signals on right now, and you can see the green arrow blinking right there. If there's direct sunlight on there, it's very hard to see. You know, the people I ride with are always telling me that my turn signal is still on. I don't know why they can't put on auto-canceling signals, but that would be great. So let's talk about the suspension. It does have fully adjustable suspension in the front and back. You can adjust the preload, the compression, and the dampening. I do wish the front you could stiffen up a little bit more. For my body weight, it seems okay. If you were a little heavier than me, I'm about 170 pounds, you may want to stiffen up the compression, but it is all tunable. So what are my overall thoughts with the bike? I love it. I don't regret buying it. It was quite expensive. Out the door, I paid $20,000 in the US, and I have probably about $3,000 in accessories into it. The most expensive being the exhaust. I have put some additional lights on the front just because I want to be able to see better at night. Not that the lights on it are not good, but I just wanted to have more light in certain areas, and I will make a video on that as well. It's a great bike. As far as reliability, I've had no issues with it besides the battery issue. So if you do have this bike or you're thinking about getting it, that would be one of the first things I would do, would be swap out the sealed lead acid battery for a lithium battery. I am in a bunch of groups, and I'm not the only one with this problem. It seems to be a very widespread problem. Do I regret buying it? Absolutely not. It's one of the coolest looking, most unique, beautiful, sexy looking bikes that I know of. When I'm out riding around, I get stopped all the time. People ask what it is because they just never seen them before. They're not as common around where I live. I believe in the US there are just a handful of dealers. I think about 45. But I did recently read an article saying that they are partnering up with KTM to bring more dealers and better service to the US, which is great, because if the dealer that I purchased this bike from is no longer a dealer, the next closest one is 6 hours away. So that is not good. I am dreading that if something were to happen. Alright everyone, I appreciate you joining me for this ride and little mini review. And would you believe that I actually forgot to tell you guys that we were hitting 10,000 miles on this ride? We are at 10,700 miles. I had to plan this video well to get that to come up, and I completely forgot to actually tell everyone when we hit 10,000 miles. But there'll be plenty more videos to come. I'm sure there are also many things and aspects of this bike that I have failed to talk about in this video. I don't want to make it too long, so if you guys have any questions, please feel free to leave them in the comments, and I will try and answer them as fast as I can. And if you have any other ideas for videos or things you want to see or hear about, let me know and I'll make a separate video on that. I thank you for joining me, and if you haven't already, please smash that like and subscribe. Check out all my awesome videos and ring that bell so you'll be notified when any of the new ones come out. Until next time, stay safe. Thanks for watching.